Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. This is Jacqueline Kinoti, a transformational life coach and a psychologist. So today I would like to ask you, how do you respond when you encounter a danger, when you encounter something that is a threat to you? Do you fight? Do you run away? Do you freeze? Do you fawn? I'm talking about trauma responses. And when I talk about trauma responses, I'm talking about the way people cope with traumatic experiences. When you have encountered traumatic experiences, they leave a mark on us. We survive the experience, we may survive the experience, but they leave their emotional imprint on us, on our bodies. They shape how we view the world and how we relate to it. I should say that you may not be having any kind of memory of the trauma that you have ever encountered. And when I talk about traumatic experiences, I've already in the previous video I've talked about examples of those adverse childhood experiences that you could have encountered in your childhood. And so when we talk about having a trauma memory, you may not be having a memory, but your body keeps the memory. No matter the time it has taken, maybe for example you're sexually abused at a very young age and maybe you're not remembering anything that happened, but your body keeps the memory. So when your body recognizes a threat, your brain and the autonomous nervous system react quickly, releasing hormones like cortisol and adrenaline so that they can help you prepare you to handle the threat, whether it involves the actual physical or emotional danger or perceived harm. So when I talk about trauma responses, is how you respond to events that are traumatic. And today I'll be talking about four types of trauma responses. Being about understanding the kind of trauma responses that you may have, it helps you in understanding the kind your behavioral patterns so that they can help you in your healing process. So the first type of trauma response is fight trauma response. When you're talking about fight trauma response is when you believe that if you're able to maintain power over the threat, you'll gain control. Fight response or fight trauma response looks like fighting. It looks like yelling to people, maybe having physical aggression. It looks like throwing things away, maybe property destruction. It can also look like feeling a knot in your stomach or crying or being argumentative or experiencing a tight jaw. When you use this fight trauma response in a positive way, it can help you set health boundaries, because you'll be able, instead of failing or instead of fighting, or maybe because someone has done something that feels inappropriate, feels that is not desired, then you can able to set a limit. This is what you can allow. It is this extent that I can allow that, instead now of yelling, instead of destroying things, instead now feeling that tightening on your stomach. So when you engage in an healthy fight, trauma responses can result in controlling behaviors, narcissistic tendencies. You can also bully people or demand perfection from others, and also feelings of entitlement. Because maybe when someone does something that you feel is not right, or you feel it is not good, then you may tend to have your way. You may tend to be argumentative so that you can have your way. You may tend maybe to fight so that you can reclaim that power. As you have seen, that you feel in when someone is having a fight trauma response, is that if they are able to maintain power, so you can do anything to maintain power. When you have fight trauma responses, you do anything that can help you maintain power. And that in a healthy way, to maintain power is setting boundaries, because no one can violate it until you allow it. Or if you lack boundaries, then people can able to take advantage of you. Then another trauma response is flight trauma response. When the threat now seems impossible to defeat in a fight trauma response, a person may default to leaving the situation entirely. Now, in the first trauma response is where you want to maintain power. But now, if you are not able to maintain power now, you leave the situation. Maybe now when you can't be able to maintain power of that argument, now you leave the situation. When we talk about threat trauma responses, when you want to leave the situation, and this could have started when you want to avoid those uncomfortable conversation or feelings or something that was dangerous around you. Fight response is when you believe if you are able to escape the threat and avoid conflict, then you will not be armed. So those people who have this kind of trauma responses are those people, they don't want to be argumentative. They don't want to help. If you just do something, they'll just leave the situation. They'll just leave you. They don't want to engage in things that will make them maybe get harmed. In an healthy situation, a flight response to stress can help you disengage from harmful conversation. They can help you even live a healthy relationship, because if your partner is doing something that maybe is not good for you, then when you have this flight response in a healthy way, then you're able to live that kind of a relationship. You're going to remove yourself from physically dangerous situation. Instead of going there or fighting, you just live. Or it can also help you assess danger before it begins. And people with unresolved trauma may perceive everything as a danger, leading to unhealthy fight responses. When you have unhealthy flight response, it may lead to obsessive or compulsive tendencies, needing to stay busy at all time because you want to avoid something. I usually say some addictive behaviors are just coping mechanism for the emotional needs that have not been met. So when you have flight trauma responses where you want to just leave the situation, and how do you cope when you are engaging in unhealthy flight tendencies? Is when now you, to avoid these emotions that you're feeling, to avoid this uncomfortableness that you're feeling, then you tend to be busy all the time. You tend to be a perfectionist, a person that is, you want everything to be done in the right way, because that is that feeling, that void, that emptiness that has not been addressed. And you have workaholic tendencies. There is something that you want maybe to run away from, and therefore you be busy at your work, or you are unable to sit still. You can't stay still because there's something that you're trying to run away from. The next trauma response is freeze trauma response. Is when you talk about freeze response, is when we stop, we stand still, when we don't do anything. We don't move backwards and we don't move forward. The freeze response is when we numb our feelings and our needs. It's when you operate as if it's a person that has no feelings. You dissociate from what is happening. There are those people who behave or who live as if they have no feelings. They don't get hurt. They don't show anything. So when someone habitually deactivates with unhealthy freeze response, it can cause dissociation. They isolate, or they frequently zone out. They have difficulty making decisions or taking actions because they don't know what they can do. They just stand still. There is nothing is coming at that moment when they have encountered a danger or a threat, or maybe they fear achieving or trying new things, because maybe if they try new things, they can cause danger. Maybe they are afraid, maybe they're gonna fail. Maybe they are afraid, maybe when they're able to face these emotions, then they'll feel pain. But I should say healing begins with feeling the emotions. And the last kind of trauma response is fawn trauma response. At its core, fawning is about people pleasing and engaging in pacifying behaviors. Those people who have this kind of trauma response, they believe, or whatever they do, they want to diffuse conflict and receive their approval. So instead of doing that, expressing to you, a person who has Fawn trauma responses, that they will go along with what other people want them to do so that they can feel they belong, or they can seek approval, or they can be loved, they can be accepted. The other version of this response is when people have compassion for other people, when they care about them, and when they take time to support, validate, and listen to them. But on the other side, another version of owning is when you put aside all your needs and focus only on other people's needs. You then create codependent relationship where you want people to need you because you need them back. The way you get yourself for this by maybe attending to other people's needs, and this can create controlling tendencies where you want other people to need you every time. You want to be there for them. And the bad side of this trauma response or unhealthy is you just leave aside your needs and be there for everyone. You're there for everyone. You don't have time to fill your cup. You're always operating on an empty cup, giving, and not allowing yourself to fill your cup first. So one thing that you need to understand, that you can have more than one trauma responses. And when you understand the kind of trauma responses that you have, then they can help you understand where you need to begin. What behaviors do you need to change? If you are people pleasing, understand what you can do. You need to put your needs first. If you're a person that maybe is always fighting, you can take time back and maybe create healthy boundaries. If you're person that maybe freeze, that maybe you run away from situation, maybe you can have some that time moment that you can able to face these feelings and work on them. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.